Entertalk Radio, you're in to all things music.
May the best brand win with Scott Robertson's Music Biz Marketing Strategies. Now, here's your host, Scott Robertson.
Hey everybody, happy Friday. You are tuned to May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Media, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. And I am Scott, your host, a man who is looking forward to the start of baseball season. Spring is in the air, the baseball players are out there, and you realize there's only like 192 or something games before baseball season ends. Baseball's a long season. Paul, you're out. And with me in the booth is Paul. Paul's hanging today at Entertalk Central down in San Diego. Are you a Padres fan, Paul?
Not a huge baseball fan.
Do you ever get out to the park? Do you go drinking? Do you do some day drinking at the park? Paul?
Not at the park. If I do day drinking, it's usually under a bridge somewhere in my car.
Not at the park.
Watching the Jets zoom by overhead.
I love how you answered the question. You're like, not at the park. Yeah, not at the park per se. Well, fun. Go ahead, Paul. What?
I was gonna make. I don't always go day drinking, but when I do, it's Dos Equis in the parking lot. I don't know.
There you go. Well, everybody's excited here in Orange County because the Angels are starting back up and the Dodgers are starting back up, and just gives us something else to do. You get in that window between the end of football season and there's just nothing to go see, do, whatever. So it's kind of nice. Well, cool, folks out there in Radio Land. You are tuned into episode 119 of The Big Show, which we call Privacy, Such a Lonely Word. And why? Because everyone is so untrue. Privacy is shaping up to be the battleground for businesses, and certainly marketers need to be very, very well versed in this stuff going forward. And you are in luck. You are so smart. You've tuned into a great episode because we are going to be joined today by data privacy attorney Lilly Li from Metaverse Law. Lily's going to help us dig into stuff like GDPR. We're going to talk about California Consumer Privacy Act. We're going to talk about whatever Congress is doing up there to talk about privacy. So the whole topic of the show today is going to be all about privacy. And please welcome to the show a big May the Best Brand Win hand for Lilly Li from Metaverse Law. How you doing, Lilly?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, very excited to have you. Very excited. So let's just dig right into it. But before we get into privacy per se, tell us a little bit about your story. How did you first become interested in privacy, and how did you get to where you are today?
Well, on a personal level, I've always been a giant science fiction geek. I read Ray Bradbury, Robert Heinlein, and I was always interested in how technology was going to shape our lives in the future. Especially with respect to how, AI technologies and companies were going to use our data in order to develop their products and sell things to us. So that was a personal interest that kind of spurred my, spurred me looking into the area more, getting to know a little bit more about technological developments. On the legal side, though, I didn't start practicing in privacy law until a few years ago, when some of my corporate clients in the litigation space just started to ask me about how to comply with various privacy laws in the United States and abroad. And I realized that this area was ripe for expansion and was only going to grow in the future.
Very, very cool. So are you still into science fiction? Do you like a good dystopian future kind of story, that kind of thing, when privacy's just run amok? Do you like that?
Oh, definitely. I mean,
nice.
Skynet is a very good example of what happens when you hand everything over to the machines, right?
Skynet, yeah, exactly. I cover AI quite a bit on the show, and I'm always kind of putting in markers and saying, if you're in the future and you're listening to this, this is the year you need to come back to and destroy this company. This is the year, this is the date. They announced it. This is where you have to come back and you have to blow the entire company up. Very important. So I put those little markers in there. I'd like to do my part for the future generations. They might listen to this. This might be important for them to figure out how to destroy the mechanical AI overlords once they take over. I agree.
That's right.
100%. Well, so what are some of the big mistakes that you're seeing companies make out there regarding privacy today? And if you have any specific examples, always great. You can even change the names of the guilty or innocent for your pleasure. There you go.
Sure. One broad trend that I see towards data privacy is that everyone likes to talk about cybersecurity. They like to talk about data breaches, but that isn't the entire picture. And as we saw through the whole Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal, it isn't just about unauthorized access to your data. It's when you give your data to a company and they use it improperly, or they give it to third parties without you realizing. So that's one big mistake that companies make. Another big mistake that companies make is that they're often willfully ignorant about how much data they're collecting and about the types of data that they're collecting. Recently, the FTC issued a $5.7 million fine against this lip syncing app called TikTok, where essentially people could upload their information and then they could pretend to be their most fabulous star and do lip sync battles against their friends. And, this company failed to abide by any of the COPPA requirements, even though it's obvious that there were children accessing the platform, giving their data, and creating lip sync videos all over the place.
Oh, man. Yeah, no kidding. Well, that's terrible. Obviously marketing is behind. No, I was going to ask you a question. You said that they're kind of willfully ignorant about their data. Now, is that because of the silos that are take place in organizations? Like, IT is responsible for gathering the data. Marketing tells us what kind of data we're going to gather. And then like the CEO is out playing golf somewhere and knows we've got some data and needs like something prepared for the next shareholders meeting and that kind of thing. Is it because they don't want to know, or is it because there's not one person overseeing it? What do you think?
I think it's a combination of both. A lot of good companies are large, they're growing, and they don't really know what different divisions are doing. But there are other companies that operate directly in the healthcare tech space, or they market directly to children, and they just try to claim that they're not in that space entirely, or they're just a back-end software provider. And that's where we see more of the bad actors being willfully ignorant.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, there's definitely mistakes being made out there. So, we've heard a lot about GDPR. I talked about it on this show quite extensively, a while back. And obviously, anybody that builds websites, is certainly very well versed in what you need to do. But one thing I've always been curious: has anybody been fined for GDPR violations in the UK yet? And do you think they will if they haven't?
There's definitely been a giant fine against Google. This was a $57 million fine by the French Data Protection Authority. And this fine was based on Google's bundling of consent with its Android applications. Essentially, you had to provide information to sign up for an account with Google just to access the device. And according to the French Data Protection Authority, you really should be getting consent for all of these different services that you're accessing. We've also seen other situations, like in Austria, we had a small local business that was fined almost 5,000 euros because they were using their CCTV cameras and pointing it towards a public street. And we also had a $400,000 fine in Portugal, where staff were using bogus accounts and accessing patient records when they shouldn't have been. There's definitely been a smattering of fines so far, and there's just going to be more in the future.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, let's that's good for the UK and everything, but let's talk about California. California talks a lot about privacy. Obviously, there's this California Consumer Privacy Act So just kind of, briefly, what is that and what's really happening with that right now?
Sure. So the California Consumer Privacy Act is one of the most far-reaching state privacy laws to date. And it applies to companies that either are a certain size or collect 50,000 or more customer records or device records. So this applies to a lot of different companies that do business in California. And the California Consumer Privacy Act is a lot like GDPR. Consumers have the right to access their information, to get a copy of their records, to know who is sharing their information and why they're sharing their information. And it also provides a right to equal services, regardless of whether or not you share your information with a provider. This way, you're not forced to share information in order to receive, free social media services, for example, unless it's absolutely necessary for what you're getting.
Now, when does this Privacy Act become law?
Well, this is an interesting thing. It's technically the act goes into effect January 1st of 2020.
Okay.
But the act requires that you provide consumers information going back 12 months. So if you don't have your data house in order, you might already be not in compliance if you don't have those records.
Wow, no kidding. So that's why people are talking about it. That's why you're talking about it so much now, because you're basically like, if you have to show 12 months of compliance, you don't have 12 months before this thing kicks in now. You actually don't, unless you have a DeLorean that goes 88 miles an hour and has a flux capacitor.
That's right. I mean, right now, people are already scrambling to try to piece together records over the last few months. And it's just going to get harder and harder as you get closer to the compliance date. So get started now or develop a time machine.
Yeah, exactly. No kidding. All right. So one of the interesting things I saw in your background is so this is a show for marketers, by a marketer, and you worked as a director of marketing and business development for a while, right? So what was that like? What was that job like?
That's a lot of fun. That was for an IP consulting company up in the Bay Area. So we were marketing to the startup community and big entrepreneurial community. And it was a great experience because I got the chance to work with traditional marketing folks like PR agencies, as well as do as well as do an Indiegogo video marketing campaign, as well as blog posts and, go to conferences. So I got to see a lot of, traditional versus new types of marketing.
Very, very cool. That's awesome. So, what do you think is going to happen over the next year or two regarding privacy?
There's going to be a lot happening. This space changes almost every day. First of all, there are so many people in Congress that are passing their own versions of a federal data privacy law. And so my expectation is that by the end of this year or early next year, we're going to see some type of federal minimum data privacy or data breach notification law. Washington State, the Senate just passed privacy legislation, and it's working its way through Washington State's government. So I see something there soon. And then even for the California Consumer Privacy Act, a lot of people don't realize it's a big deal, and a lot of people think it only applies to tech companies. And I think that over the next couple of years, real traditional industries like real estate and financial services and things like that are going to realize that the CCPA affects them directly.
So true. Now, why do you think the government's getting so involved? Do you think the government's involved? I mean, obviously the government doesn't have much of a collective conscience. So like that, so they don't really care. But is it do you think it is a thing because they're getting so many complaints, and then they have to like be perceived as doing something about it, or is it just, hey, here's a way that we can find a lot of businesses and make a lot of money, especially if we come after big companies like Google and Facebook who just pay us millions and millions of dollars? You know, is it a revenue source, or do you think is it dealing with consumer complaints, or do you think that they've grown a conscience about this in some way?
Well, this is a very interesting issue because it's bipartisan. And that is very, very unusual in the current political climate. From the Democrats, you're getting a lot of push from consumer protection organizations. Mm-hmm. And there was the whole Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal, which affected potentially the election. So that's a lot of what's spurring Democrats right now. While on the Republican side, it's a national security issue. If you don't protect personal information, then foreign entities can come in and essentially exploit your vulnerabilities. And it's also a business issue, too. Right now, it's very difficult for businesses to operate in the United States because there's such a patchwork of state laws. And so pro-business Republicans actually want there to be some federal legislation that might preempt and streamline the state's privacy legislation that's currently in the pipeline.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, the government is certainly, they certainly are more present in privacy than they certainly have been. I think it's fascinating. Congress is fascinating to me. I've talked about on this show quite a few times that it's fascinating that you have people that are older citizens that aren't your most tech savvy people, basically writing the rules for businesses that change their business model on the hour. And it's funny to watch them, like when they they basically bring up executives from Google and they try to and the folks from Google are just like They don't even know how to respond to some of the things that are happening. We've only got about 5 seconds left in this segment, but very, very interesting stuff. Lilly, thanks very much. And, we're going to come back after the commercial break and we're going to talk about who's winning and losing. And Lilly's going to stay with us. And she's going to give you some privacy tips in the third segment, so you want to stick around for that. Talk to you in a few minutes.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Entertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on entertalkradio.com.
May the best brand win with Scott Robertson's Music Biz Marketing Strategies. Now, here's your host, Scott Robertson.
Hey, everybody, it is Friday, and you are in the right place. You are tuned to May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Radio, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. I am Scott, your host. I'm here with the fabulous Lilly Li from Metaverse Law. We're talking privacy all day today. Lilly, you still hanging in there? How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. It's Friday afternoon, loving it.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Well, cool. Well, Lilly and I are going to tag team some winning and losing stories for you folks out there in Radio Land. Anyway, without further ado, we will dig into this. So the first one, I love to cover the emerging science on this program. This should be your number one source for science, and this story is no exception. Bald men are more intelligent, dominant, and wise, according to research from, we don't really care what it's from. Oh, it's from the University of Pennsylvania, but that's good enough for me. That works. So new research says male baldness myth turned this once thought confidence killer into a new lease on life for men around the world. The study found that participants rated men without hair as more attractive and sexier than their full head hair counterparts. I think we all know that's true. They also perceive men without hair as wiser, stronger, and more dominant. Now, first of all, this is a fantastic study. I mean, this study is important. This is the kind of this is higher education needs to be spending its grant dollars doing more things like this for people like me who don't have hair. I think it's I think we can all agree that it's really, really important. And you just can't argue with science. You can try, but you're not going to be able to argue with this much science coming at you. If you want to read that story, by the way, it's on it's all over the place, but I picked up at viralhatch.com. So, Lilly, what's your perception? In dealing with men that have hair and don't have hair, what do you think about the science coming out of University of Pennsylvania on this thing?
I totally agree with it. If you are losing your hair and you're going bald, you got to own it. And I think that the people who own it, of course, they're going to be more confident and more wise than the folks that, try to put in hair plugs or something else to deal with the situation.
Exactly. So you're saying you're anti-comb over, a guy that's got like the two or three like strands, and he's still trying to make that into a full hair experience. You're not into that, is what you're saying.
That's right. Just take it all off, wax the head, make it real shiny, and just go for it.
I know. And then you will be, and according to the University of Pennsylvania, if you do that, you will be definitely winning, and you'll be more intelligent, dominant, and wise. I don't know what your hair has to do with the perception of intelligence by hair we could do a whole hour just on that, because I would love to believe that's true. I can't imagine that that's true, but that's emerging science for you right there. I think both Lilly and I are going to put this one in the winning category. Let's move on. China, good old China. China says it has cloned a police dog to speed up training. So it's costly and time consuming to train police dogs, but China has decided to make copies of its best performing dogs. Straight up, real story, not a onion story. They have just cloned a dog, a 2-month-old Kuming wolf dog, which was cloned from a great canine detective, as according to the story. By the way, you can read the whole thing at Engadget this week. And the pup was cloned by plucking somatic cells from the skin of an adult dog, creating a cloned embryo and implanting that into a beagle, like Snoopy. So they implanted it into Snoopy for birth. And then they just make dogs now. Like, that's the plan, to mass produce cloned police dogs. That is the plan. And I don't think that it takes anyone, all longtime listeners to the show know that we're going to come down on losing for this, because clones, AI, all of those kind of things, they sound good. They're cute at the first part of the movie. What happens at the end of the movie, everybody? By the end of the movie, we got a whole different problem on our hands, right? Because somebody didn't see it at the beginning of the movie and shut it down. So what do you think about that story, Lily? What do you think about the cloned police dog?
I think that's a horrible idea. I mean, if you look at Dolly, the original clone sheep, there were so many issues with the clone, aging faster, having all these health issues. And you're just going to assume that you're going to create these identical puppies that are going to be perfectly trained. No way. No way.
No way. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree 100%. There are things that science shouldn't mess with, and yet they continue to mess with. And China, which doesn't quite have, the FDA or anything like that. I mean, God knows what they're doing over there. I mean, if weird stuff is going to come into this world, it's going to come from an unregulated place, like that, where people don't even know what's going on in various parts of the country. Harder to do in the United States because you show up and a bunch of people with, cell phone cameras would be, sharing it all over social media and shutting you down pretty fast. But over there, who knows? I think we're going to put that one firmly in losing. And if there's another third category for just incredibly creepy and frightening, then that also qualifies. An interesting story that came out this week, the owners of the Krispy Kreme donut franchises and the Krispy Kreme donut company have admitted to having a family history of Nazi ties. The family that owns Krispy Kreme's, Keurig, Dr. Pepper, and Panera Bread, ironically, say their Nazi ancestors used slave labor during World War II. This is the Ryman family, which owns the controlling stake in the large company JAB Holdings, one of the richest families in Germany. And basically, this sort of came to light this week. And normally you would say, okay, it's kind of losing, obviously. But I think that the way that they sort of owned from a public relations standpoint, the way that they sort of owned the crisis made sure that it didn't become a bigger story. Basically, what they said is they outed the fact that this was out there. They said their quotes were, "Hey, we're ashamed and we can't even believe that there's nothing to gloss over. These crimes are disgusting. That we have this in our family. It's terrible, that kind of thing. And we're going to make donations to charity and that kind of thing." And I think from a PR standpoint, the reason you didn't see this go super south on them is the fact that they basically kind of admitted to it. They outed it. And sort of came forward with it, which I think you'd want to see every company that discovers kind of literally skeletons in its closets, kind of do. But it's an interesting story nonetheless. Lily, what do you think of Krispy Kreme and the whole ties to the Nazi party?
I agree with you that generally you would think of this as a losing story. But I remember someone in college once told me is that, if you go back far enough, we're all related in the distant past. And so there has been a time in our history and our ancestry where we've been the person oppressed. And there's also been a time when we've been the oppressors. And I think you have to own that and acknowledge that as part of your history and not shy away from it, because that's the only way you'll actually have any empathy with other people that are suffering around the world. So I'm glad that they own up to it. Could they have done it sooner? Maybe. Well, who knows?
Yeah. And of course, does it affect anyone's decision to eat Krispy Kreme donuts? Probably not. Right. I mean, it's one of these things where it's
those are so good.
Exactly. You always wonder, people sit around in public relations circles and say, like, for a company like that, what would they have to do to get you up? It's like, hey, that's their business. That's their business. I'm about my business, which is getting a donut. You know what I mean? It's like, you want to see personal behavior, basically beat out any type of, brand sentiment that you might have. It's like, put a donut in front of you and go, yeah, I'll take one. Krispy Kremes, they're awesome. They're amazing. Well, cool. We're going to put that in winning just because of the way they kind of came out with it. Apple came out this week. They had a big event, and they talked about a new credit card, and they promote it as a greater privacy protecting credit card than has ever existed before. Of course, it's like silver and metal, and it's made out of titanium and laser etched, and it's focused on privacy and security and all those kind of things. It has no signature. It has no card number. Who needs things like that? It has nothing. It has your name written in a lovely font, and it's pretty minimalist, right? I mean, it's Apple, right? So design's going to be pretty key. Of course, it is made out of titanium and not plastic. So, anywho's, I wanted to talk, since we have Lilly here, talking about privacy. What do you think about the Apple credit card and what they say that it's more secure and protects privacy better than the rest of the financial services community? Have you had any time to think about that one?
Sure. I do like the idea of a credit card that doesn't have a credit card number or a signature. I mean, it's just so easy right now to give your credit card to someone in order to charge it and then be the victim of identity theft. You just need to take the number, enter it in on some online payment platform, and you're done. Although I do see there being a separate security issue in that it's kind of like the Model T, right? How will you know it's your credit card versus someone else's credit card? There's going to be a whole cottage industry of credit card holders, just like, iPhone. And that's a separate issue. But I'm sure cottage industries will work their way around that one.
What do you think? So they've partnered with Goldman Sachs on this credit card, right? What do you think of that partnership with Goldman Sachs?
I mean, the financial services industry is very, very highly regulated. And so it does make sense that you would partner with someone big in the space just for all the compliance needs. The other question, of course, now is how much information are they sharing with Goldman Sachs when you use the Apple credit card? So let's read the fine print in their privacy policy.
Yeah. Interesting. As a privacy attorney, do you feel like Apple does a better job? They build their brand around the fact that we protect privacy better than anybody else in tech. And that's mainly because everybody else in tech does not care about it in any way. They certainly haven't. So do you think that Apple actually does care more about it? What are your impressions of Apple versus the rest of the tech industry?
I really like Apple. And I do like the fact that they seem to incorporate privacy by design in their product pipeline. And so when they're developing an iPhone or a MacBook, they're actually considering things like, how do you log in? Can people break into the system? And is the system sharing information across devices? And as we saw at the recent CES conference, they are using privacy as part of their marketing strategy. That's fantastic.
That's true.
Now, obviously, it's a very complicated product. So Apple, just like other folks, are going to have security glitches. And there was a recent security glitch with their FaceTime app that they were able to remedy quickly. So on the whole, I think they actually do, walk the walk. But again, no company is 100% secure.
Yeah, true. A buddy of mine works for Apple Maps. He's a developer for Apple Maps. And he always tells me, he says, Apple cares so much about security that he, inside Apple, can't get access to people's data of how they use Apple Maps. It is so locked away that even the employees can't get to it to make Apple Maps better. And so I always joked with him and I said, is that why Apple Maps sucks so bad? And he laughed, and then he punched me, and he was like, no, that's not why. I said, okay, so is there another reason why Apple Maps sucks? Then no, I'm just kidding. But it did say that they block off user data, so even Apple employees can't see it. to make the app better.
Now, that's a good strategy. I mean, there was a big issue with Uber where they got hammered because their employees could access location data for users even after they got out of the car and started walking home. And that's a huge issue.
Yeah. Oh, totally. That's totally huge. Well, cool. We'll put Apple in winning for its credit card for right now. Plus, everybody wants a titanium card just so they can whip that thing out and go, check out my super awesome titanium Apple credit card. Winning. Let's talk about HMD. HMD's in hot water because they admit that their Nokia 7 Plus phone was sending data to a nasty little place. It was sending data to China. HMD's Nokia 7 Plus was sending users' personal information to a server in China, which was owned by Chinese Telecom or China Telecom, which is owned by the state. And so, you are sending it literally to the government. Really fascinating story here. By the way, if you want to see the whole story, you can pick it up at arstechnica.com. Lily, what do you think of that one? So that one kind of came out this week, and people are like, wait a minute, now we got, personal data being sent to China. I mean, that can't be good. We only got about 1:30 left, but go ahead.
Yes, I think that definitely is a problem, especially when you're not expecting your personal data to go to another government. The problem is, I think this trend is only going to increase. China is implementing new cybersecurity laws where if you're in a big telecom or in a major industry and you're located in China, you have to allow the government access to investigate your IT systems. So this is something that is just going to increase as time goes on.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, it's going to be even tougher, for a country like China where the government, literally kind of rules over everything, with an iron fist and that sort of thing. It's like obviously the citizens don't have an expectation of a right to privacy from their government just because of the way their government runs and that kind of thing. But man, it's just weird for HMD to have to deal with this glitch, I guess, in their phone that it was sending people's personal data to directly to China. So they've been this was covered quite extensively in the news media this week. So we only got about 15 seconds left in this segment, but quite a bit of winning and losing this week. Quite a bit of fun stuff. I think one thing that we've all learned is that that no matter who you are, as long as you're bald or balding, you're in pretty good shape, honestly. And you're in good shape because you're listening to May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Radio. Come on back in segment 3, and Lilly Li is going to give you some privacy tips. Talk to you in a few minutes.
I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Entertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on EntertalkRadio.com.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
May the best brand win with Scott Robertson's Music Biz Marketing Strategies. Now, here's your host, Scott Robertson.
Hey, everybody. It is still Friday. You are still tuned to May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Radio, the undisputed leader in music biz talk. I am Scott, your host. I'm hanging out with the fabulous data privacy attorney, Lilly Li from Metaverse Law. Lilly, how you been doing so far? You doing good? You still hanging in there?
Yes, still hanging in there.
Awesome. Well, we had fun talking about winning and losing, but here in good old segment 3, Lilly is going to grace us with some awesome, her top 5 privacy tips for companies to follow. So, without further ado, Lilly, what's the first tip that you have for us?
The first tip I have is data mapping. I think that all companies need to sit down with all of their management and figure out all the locations that they store data and all the different places that they collect customer data. And this is because, no matter how simple your business is, you've got data in all different parts of your business. They could be in some abandoned Dropbox folder, some abandoned Gmail account, and you really have to know where everything is before you can actually secure it.
Yeah, no kidding. And who was it that just was it Facebook that housed like hundreds of millions of passwords in a plain text file out there, and somebody found it in the media and like exposed it and said you should change your password like right now because all these Facebook passwords were in a plain text, like a note file on a server.
That's right. And then if it's in plain text, anyone can see it.
Exactly. It's good. And this is why. So, do you work with a lot of IT companies? You must have to educate a lot of IT companies because they kind of know where all the bodies are buried, right? They know where the data is and that kind of thing better than anybody in the organization, but they may not know what's legal and what's not.
That's right. So, some of my clients are IT service providers, and again, they know all about the security aspect of it, but they don't know what's proper in terms of collection and use.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I've often said on the show, I think that pretty soon it's going to have to be like like when you fire a nuclear missile, you have to like turn 2 keys. I think like when you send any type of, before you engage in any type of marketing effort in the future, I think it's going to have to be like a 3-key kind of operation with like IT, legal, and marketing sort of all turning their keys at the same time for like a successful launch. What do you think about that? Like kind of the 3-legged stool.
Oh, definitely. And that's actually my second tip is that you should be making friends with people in other departments. Legal, marketing, IT usually don't talk to one another. They're often working at odds with one another. And so you have to work together to say, hey, is this data collection legal? Are we securing it properly? And, marketing folks are great. Marketing folks always have the best ideas for new ways to get customer information. They just need to run it by legal and IT first.
Yeah, no kidding. Because exactly, I certainly know that from working in my corporate jobs. If we had to have conversations about what data we were collecting. We used to use in organizations I've worked for in the past. Everybody had their own sort of FileMaker Pro database of all of the same contacts, right? But everybody kind of had their own databases. And then before IT came in and sort of merged that into one like master database that we could kind of share, you would have no idea if like one department was contacting the same, customer, and then another department was contacting that same customer that same day. And so your organization could look like just kind of crazy, that you don't even know what one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. I saw that a lot. I think it still happens today,
That's
too.
True. And that is definitely a branding issue. It's not just a privacy issue. If your customer, unsubscribes from a list and then suddenly they receive a magazine from you and a call from you the next day, you don't look like you've got things in order.
That's true. I always say, marketing is the relationship business, right? And this is where I'm at odds with a lot of digital marketers because they don't, much like China cloning police dogs, they don't always think about what they're doing. They just think about what's going to convert, what's going to be that. And they, they have these kind of elaborate funnel based approaches and these kind of things. And I always say that, it's not what you can do, it's what you should do. And we're supposed to be in the relationship business. And if you're truly in the relationship business, then you should care about who's on the receiving end of whatever you're about to inflict on them, And I just don't think enough people in marketing take a step back and realize that this is bigger than your department's objectives. This is a big deal, and it affects everybody. Well, very, very cool. And I agree with you that it's important to make friends and break down those silos. It's really, do you see a day coming where there's going to be like a department created that's all about privacy, that sort of oversees all of these various pieces that can interface and kind of make things happen in legal, marketing, and IT and whatever else they need? And like, is there going to be like, a chief privacy officer, created, and like privacy people, privacy police or something?
Definitely. And all the major companies, there usually is already a privacy department or a chief privacy officer. And in the GDPR, there's actually a requirement for a data protection officer if you're handling a lot of sensitive data or you're monitoring a lot of people. So this is starting to get built into the requirements for having a business.
Absolutely. And I would just say for that position, it's not just about technical skills, because some of your greatest IT people, and I love you to death, I do, but you're not the greatest people when it comes to dealing with other human beings. And you lack empathy a lot. And to me, if you're going to, the why we do privacy thing comes back to empathy, right? And you have to be able to kind of, put yourself in the audience's position and say, if I was the customer, would I want to receive 9 emails from Albertsons when I only go to the store one time a week? And they should know when you go to the store because you swipe your credit card on the same day every week. You know what I mean? That empathy thing's important.
That's right. And, also root for some of those IT folks out there. I know some great IT professionals that are very pro-privacy, and they're the ones that are actually like pushing on legal and pushing on marketing to help them out, because sometimes they're stuck with all the privacy compliance, but they don't have a lot of the managerial responsibility in order to actually implement them. We got to just have empathy all around.
Empathy. I agree. I think marketing, to be in marketing today, you just must have it. You must lead with it. Otherwise, you're not going to have very good relationships out there. Well, what's your third tip, Lilly?
My third tip is to develop an incident response plan and then actually practice it instead of having it just hang out on a shelf in a back closet somewhere.
Nice. So that means we've got kind of a plan. Now, what kind of incident are you referring to? A privacy breach, or is there something else?
Well, ideally, an incident response plan is comprehensive. So this could be someone hacking into your systems. This could be an employee stealing confidential information, or a PR nightmare, for instance, where one of your customers talks about how you guys improperly handled their data, and now it's on all the major news outlets. So basically, think of the worst case scenario from both the privacy and cybersecurity point of view, and then figure out what your joint response is from both a marketing, legal, PR perspective.
Plus, that's a super fun brainstorm. If you ever sit down with your corporate team and have the what's the worst thing that could happen to this company conversation, it's a really in a not funny way. It's a very dark conversation, obviously, but you do it in sort of a proactive way, and then you find people sort of one-upping each other of like, well, here's how the incident could get bigger and bigger and bigger, and pretty soon it's just like a disaster movie waiting to happen. So it's always a fun brainstorm. Always brings people together, creates stronger bonds within the company. If you can bond over all the bad stuff that could happen to your place of employment, it's a lot of fun. But I agree with you that you should. Your third tip is that you should develop an incident response plan, and then make sure that you practice it so that it's sort of when, not if, something happens, you are going to be plenty ready to get it done. Right.
That's right.
Nice. What do you got for us for tip 4, Lily?
Tip 4 is the whole privacy by design aspect. If you make privacy part of your project management playbook, then you can address risks before they happen. So, for instance, you want to go out and collect all this sensitive children's data because you have this amazing toy that's going to flood the marketplace. Well, maybe before you launch it, you figure out your consent process so that parents can actually consent to giving you that information and you actually know what you need. And this applies to any product launch or any marketing initiative.
Yeah, very important. But, absolutely such an important piece that probably gets left off of, a lot of it's not the most exciting part of the plan, right? The exciting part of the plan is, product development and figuring out how we're going to market it and how we're going to sell it and all those kind of things. And very, it doesn't always come up, without you sort of forcing it to come up. How are we going to make sure that privacy is protected, throughout this process? And do you think it's just something that companies have to learn by doing, and just sort of make it part of the template?
That's right. Make it part of the checklist when you're launching a product or doing a marketing initiative. And, I don't think of it as this is just the boring part of the marketing launch or the product launch. I mean, this is part of the customer experience too. Your customer should know what they're giving you and what value they're getting in response.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you don't see, at least it doesn't, I do marketing plans for a lot of different companies. And if I'm not, I'm usually the one that is bringing up privacy and talking about it. And like when I bring it up, it's the first time it's been discussed. It's and you can tell. What? What do you think? And then, and so it's just, I think it's just one of these new realities that we have to sort of embrace and learn, and that's why listeners to the show, marketers out there, make sure that if no one in your organization is bringing this stuff up, that you are. When Cam Spam, came out, and I was director of marketing at NAM, we had a meeting, right after that saying, here's what Cam Spam says for associations. And so here's what we need to make sure we are in compliance with. And also what a good opportunity for us to look at, what we're doing. And so, is any of our communications driving people away from us as opposed to drawing people towards us? That kind of thing. I think so. Mm-hmm. Well, cool. So what's your 5th tip that you have for us, Lily?
This goes right in line with what we were just talking about, is that I always tell people to stay positive when they're thinking about privacy and cybersecurity. It's easy just to focus on the doomsday scenario, and it's easy just to focus on legal fines or regulatory hurdles. But at the end of the day, privacy isn't just about compliance. It's about what your brand is about. It's about how you interact with other companies, what information you're sharing with them. And so I really try to get clients to think of it as their competitive advantage. The companies that think about data, the companies that think about what they're doing with their customers' data are the ones that are going to be at a real advantage when they either want to do an IPO, if they want to be acquired by a major company, if they want to launch outside of the United States, or even in a crisis scenario, what their customers think about them, because you're prepared. So yeah, stay positive. This is all a good trend for companies, and you should be part of that trend instead of fighting.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we mentioned earlier in the program, a company like Apple, I mean, they absolutely use it as a differentiator. They say, hey, we are not Google. We are not, out there selling. We are not Facebook. We are not Google. We are not out there selling, customers' data to the highest bidder. In fact, we are the defenders of this data, even from our own employees and that kind of thing. And they sort of make it part and parcel of the brand. Whereas, companies like, Facebook certainly don't, So I think it's interesting, to use it that way. And like I said, any marketer that's really doing the job in the right way and thinking about marketing in terms of relationship building, you have to know that when we're inflicting our stuff on people, their lives will be just as complete without it. So you have to really make it great and make sure that you have a ton of consent before you decide to, interrupt people's world and interrupt their time with something that you think is important for them. Because if you get that wrong, your relationship is officially over, and which is sort of the dictionary definition of failure in marketing. You know what I mean?
That's right. I mean, if people want what you're giving them, they will consent to give you the information in order to get it. You just have to make sure that's part of your mindset.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, cool. Well, what have we learned today, class? We learned that privacy is, privacy is certainly going to be a very, very exciting and interesting area, and all marketers need to be well versed in it, along with IT and legal, kind of working in partnership to make sure that you're building those relationships. That's so important. Lilly, thanks for being on the show so much. Where can people contact you for more info?
Sure. They can visit my website. It's www.metaverselaw.com, or they can email me at info@metaverselaw.com.
Very cool. Well, you heard it here. Lilly Li was our guest today on May the Best Brand Win on Entertalk Radio. Come on back next week. We'll have a fresh show. And in the meantime, protect that privacy, people. Have a great weekend. We'll see you later. You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Entertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?